Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching The Wire Wrap. I'm Sravasti Dasgupta. Nitish Kumar has taken oath as the Chief Minister of Bihar for the 10th time after the National Democratic Alliance swept the elections in the state last week. A court in Bangladesh has sentenced former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to death over crimes against humanity in connection with the protests last year, which has put India in the spot over whether it will respect the extradition treaty and hand her over to Bangladesh. Meanwhile, in India, the UP government has moved court to drop charges against the accused in the killing of Mohammad Akhlaq in 2015, and top Maoist commander Madvi Hidma has been killed by security forces. So what does all this mean for India, Bangladesh and national and international politics? To discuss all this, I am being joined by Ashutosh. He's editor at The Wire Hindi, and Maya Mirchandani. She's a senior journalist. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let's get started with the new Bihar government, which was sworn in on Thursday. Just to tell our viewers that last week the Bihar election results saw the NDA sweeping the elections in the state, winning 202 out of the 243 seats. And Nitish Kumar was sworn in on Thursday as Chief Minister for a record 10th time. But what is interesting is that even as he has taken oath, the 26 ministers that were sworn in along with him, 10 out of these 26 are members of political dynasties, and this comes on the back of the BJP running a sustained campaign during the elections against political dynasts in the opposition parties, including the Congress and the RJD. How do you see this?
It's BJP's hypocrisy, and somehow it remains unnoticed by a large section of media. So, as you rightly said, 10 out of 26 ministers in Nitish Kumar's cabinet, they are dynasts, like they are children of their former ministers. How many of them are noted by, how many of them make headlines? And not just this, let me move a little bit away from this. Two of most eminent ministers of Modi's cabinet are Amit Shah and Rajnath Singh. What are their sons doing? Are they not carrying forward a kind of dynastic politics? How many of them get noticed? How many of them get questioned for what they are doing? What are their quote unquote achievements? Sadly, this is the state of affairs in BJP and remains completely unaccountable for.
Maya, I want to come to you also on this. The fact that Bihar has, in a sense, been the only Hindi heartland state where the BJP has not contested elections on its own. Now, this victory comes for the BJP. It has emerged as the single largest party. What will this imply for national politics going forward?
Well, I mean, I think the BJP for itself sees it as sort of breaking the final barrier as far as Bihar is concerned. Now, the fact of the matter is, whether it's the BJP or another party which was dominant, I think the Bihar election in general has thrown up a lot of questions about the sanctity of the electoral process. We've heard allegation after allegation of vote chori and the intensive revision that was taking place. We heard about the model code of conduct being violated blatantly with this 10,000 rupees for women voters. So I think for me, rather than what it means for the BJP, the question really is, what does it mean for Indian elections? If this is the kind of activity that takes place in the run-up to a poll, in the final weeks of a campaign, under the Election Commission's nose, in spite of the opposition, pulling out data, coming up with examples, case studies, it's not simply anecdotal anymore. But you have an Election Commission that is willfully looking the other way. So, I mean, whether it's the BJP winning Bihar as the final barrier, whether they did it without all these other factors at play or not, I think the questions about the results are going to be moot unless the Election Commission comes out and clarifies and assures and investigates all these other various factors. I mean, honestly, we can talk about the fact that there are states in which the opposition parties win and there are states in which the BJP has won. But I really just have a larger question on the sanctity of what the Election Commission is doing right now.
And this question is also going to come up even as 12 other states and union territories SIR is being held. But let's move on to the question of Sheikh Hasina's extradition. This comes after Bangladesh's 3-member special crimes tribunal sentenced the former Prime Minister to death on Monday for crimes against humanity during the July uprising last year. Now, Dhaka has formally asked India to immediately hand her over under the extradition treaty. Ashutosh, India has said that it has noted the verdict, even as she continues to stay in India. What are the options for India in such a scenario?
See, as of now, India can take shelter against the famous clause that these are political crimes, and we are not obliged to extradite a political personality for the political crimes. But I think this reply cannot be a blunt reply. It has to be quite a tactful one. So it now rests upon Indian diplomacy. How are they able to convince their Bangladeshi counterparts about the non-feasibility of the extradition? And more importantly, India also needs to impress upon them that the collective bloodlust, the thirst for Sheikh Hasina is not going to bring any stability to Bangladesh. If Bangladesh has to move towards stability, it has to move beyond what Sheikh Hasina had done. Yes, Sheikh Hasina was guilty, but the manner in which the entire trial has been conducted in absentia, that is not going to restore any kind of sanity to Bangladesh. This is now the task of Indian diplomacy to quietly spread the message in Bangladesh through its vast network of agencies. Right now, I believe.
So basically, Ashutosh is raising the fact that there's a political nature of this verdict as well. So how must one see it? Is it a political spectacle ahead of next year's election?
I mean, look, the political spectacle within Bangladesh should not, beyond a point, be influencing India's response. It is, as you said, the MEA issued a statement saying it's noted the verdict. Bangladeshi domestic politics has been playing out in a particular way ever since the ouster of Sheikh Hasina. In fact, even before the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, the student protests and the agitations that led to it. The question I think Indian foreign policy analysts and the establishment needs to ask is, things have come to this pass right now, but what is it that has been rocking the India-Bangladesh relationship ever since Sheikh Hasina's ouster? Could things have been handled differently since she has been in exile in India? She's given her first round of interviews in the last few weeks in the run-up, in fact, to this verdict. The verdict came soon after she had given a whole bunch of interviews to not just Reuters and international agencies, but also some Indian journalists as well. She's been living here. The Bangladeshis have been hostile towards India since the takeover. India itself has been talking about how Bangladesh is being leveraged, the new regime in Bangladesh, the interim government in Bangladesh is being leveraged against India. I don't think there are any good options right now. Can India send Sheikh Hasina back under whatever extradition agreements exist between the two countries? No, because there is a political angle to this. If they don't engage with the Bangladeshis on this, what does it mean for the existing state of tense ties? In fact, I think the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval has been invited to Dhaka now, and they're going to be, I guess, discussing what the outcome of this is going to be. Even if India agrees, will Sheikh Hasina be willing to go back and, appeal or face? Yes, you're absolutely right that the way this trial has been conducted with the prime accused and now convicted in absentia is basically also flouting the norms of delivering justice. But isn't that the way most political trials go when leaders are in exile? So I don't think there's a difference, as far as that is concerned. I think New Delhi right now is between a rock and a hard place when it comes to Bangladesh. So it really is a question of what the back channel is right now in Delhi between the Ministry of External Affairs and Sheikh Hasina. Her son is issuing statements from the UK. Everybody is kind of making statements out of turn right now. And diplomacy is something that often happens behind the curtains. I mean, it's always more effective when things are not so out in the open, but I think this is not, there's no easy answer right now for Delhi.
But as you were just mentioning that Bangladesh's National Security Advisor Khalilur Rahman has met the Indian NSA Ajit Doval and he has invited him to Dhaka. So what does this mean for Bangladesh-India ties ahead of the elections? Because India obviously wants to maintain a modicum of good ties with the next government, whoever will come to power. So how do you see this?
The verdict, you mean, right?
The fact that
They are
the
meeting.
two NSAs have also met and India wants to, expectation of good ties with the incoming government is also there. So what would this mean?
See, prima facie, Bangladeshi government as well, the caretaker government, they also want, quote unquote, a stable and good relationship with India because they carry a massive border with India. But it is far more in India's interest to have good relationship with Bangladesh, and the present verdict is going to strain the already strained relationship between the two countries. Let us not forget, under Sheikh Hasina, our entire northeast corridor had been substantially stable.
Stable, right.
Under Sheikh Hasina, right? Because she, whatever wrath she had earned in Bangladesh, at least she was our ally, our good ally. So there were certain positive outcomes throughout her 10 or 12-year period, when also there were allegations of elections being rigged. So this verdict, which now places a direct demand of her extradition, is going to put India under a great sense of bother. How does India respond to it? As Maya just said, there are no easy answers. I would say that at this juncture, it is important for India to reach out to all the possible agencies and institutions in Bangladesh which are slipping towards Islamism. Let's not mistake it. Right. Which are slipping towards sliding towards Islamic tendencies very fast. Just recently, we know the student union elections of Dhaka University, for the first time in the history of independent Bangladesh, they were won by Jamaat Islami. It has never happened before. So Jamaat Islami is now emerging as a very solid, strong party. And if the elections take place at the due time in February, if there's a big if, we are still not sure about it, Islami may very well emerge as the second largest party if the ban is not lifted from Sheikh Hasina's party. So what are India's options? India has to persuade whatever government is there in Bangladesh to engage with Sheikh Hasina's party. You can't keep a political party prohibited, banned forever. This is the real test of India's diplomacy.
Yeah, I mean, and just to add to that, I mean, I think that it's still a little premature to look ahead for the next, to see the outcome of the next elections and what would bring. I think India-Bangladesh ties are going to be very tense and very turbulent going forward as well. I don't think there's any stomach to actually bring Sheikh Hasina's party, even without her at the helm, back into the political fray right now in Bangladesh. And yes, I think you're absolutely right about the sort of fundamentalism creeping into Bangladeshi domestic politics as well. But I think, if anything, the last month or two has shown us that we're dealing with difficult regimes all around us in the neighborhood. We've just invited the Taliban to India and sort of formalized diplomatic ties with them. So the Bangladeshis are going to turn around and say, what's the problem with us if you can talk to them? And I think that's an answer India is going to have to find a formulation to. And I think let's not also like sort of neglect the way India-Bangladesh ties have also been strained while Sheikh Hasina has been in power. Maybe not at the government to government and at the diplomatic level between ministries and officials, but I mean, between the 2019 and 2024 election and the kind of rhetoric you saw on the CAA, the kind of rhetoric you saw about illegal immigration from Bangladesh, the referencing of, really derogatory language towards Bengali-speaking Muslims in particular, the kind of ostracization, all that has resonated in Bangladesh. So the hostility towards India, I mean, is it the hostility towards India or is it hostility towards the current Indian political dispensation? And I think that's a question that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is constantly kind of parsing and trying to find an answer to. Again, like I said, I think things are going to be turbulent for some time to come. I don't think India is in a position to call the shots or even influence, no matter what they may try to do domestically within Bangladesh. There was a time when Trump was speaking India's language a little bit on Dhaka, but ties with the US right now are so strained as well between India and the US. So, like I said, rock and a hard place, no easy answer.
I'll just quickly add a point, very fine point you're making. Just around the time India got a party in the center which started calling the Bangladeshis as termites. This was also the period that coincided with the unprecedented rise of Sheikh Hasina. So the period of rigging in Bangladesh, it coincides with these two political parties then are kind of moving in tandem.
And that's very interesting that you mentioned that, because I want to bring in our next topic of discussion, which is the fact that in one of the earliest instances of a lynching of a Muslim on suspicion of holding beef, Mohammad Akhlaq, who was lynched in 2015, now 10 years later, the Uttar Pradesh government has moved to drop charges against the accused involved in the lynching. How do you see this move by the Adityanath government? The case sort of became a turning point in under the Modi government in 2015, and since then a lot has happened, and we can discuss that in a bit. But how do you see this particular move by the Adityanath government?
Very simple. I'm not surprised. I mean, nobody killed Akhlaq, right?
But the fact
there is no other answer to this. I mean, I think what happened shook many of us with a conscience, with a commitment to the Constitution, with a sense of what it means to be Indian, to the core. And once again, you see that when it comes to a case like this, that justice is not blind, justice is absent. So I don't really see, I mean, when you say how do you see it, how is one supposed to see it? His wife, widow, has, I think, spoken to some journalists yesterday or day before. And, I mean, where are they going to go next? What is their forum to plead for some sort of justice? I mean, effectively, what they're saying is nobody killed Akhlaq.
Ashutosh, you have written a very fine piece in the Wire about this, that the fact that this case has changed India in many ways, and it spurned the award Vapsi movement. Many notable writers, intellectuals gave back their awards that were given by the government. The government at that time had said that it was a sponsored movement. In the 10 years since, a lot has changed. There have been many instances of these alleged cases of lynching on suspicion of carrying beef. In many cases, it has not been proved. But what has changed, that you, as you rightly note in your piece, is the fact that the outrage has only diminished over the years. So you say that the dissent has died. So with the dissent, do you think hopes of justice have also died?
I'll come to it, but just quickly add to her point, to your original question, how do I see this? It was in the making. In the same piece I have written that 7 or 8 days after his lynching, then Minister of Culture Mahesh Sharma, who was the sitting MP from that area, he told me, back then I worked with a different newspaper, he told me in a recorded interview, there was no intention to kill. I am a doctor, I have seen the injuries, there was no intention to kill. This was his own recorded statement, we carried back then on page 1. So, right after the incident, the entire government machinery is out to prove that there was no murder at all. And then, please don't forget, as I wrote there, a week after Panch Janne, which is RSS magazine, they ran, 2015 October, ran a cover story which defended cow lynching on the suspicion of cow beef, if you find cow beef, saying, अगर कोई गाय को मारता है तो उसके पापी को मारने में आपको पाप नहीं लगेगा, ये वेदों का आदेश है. In other words, Vedas, it's the order of decree of the Vedas to kill or to assassinate a cow slaughterer. So this is how they had been justifying it. And please see that this is how Gorakshas have emerged over the last 10 years, justifying their previous incidents one after the other.
Yeah, but I think to take on what you were originally asking him about whether the outrage has diminished, I mean, I don't know if the outrage has diminished or a sense of hopelessness about these cases has come, and I don't think the two are quite the same thing. I think people are outraged about so many things right now. I mean, there are so many things that cause outrage. Caste violence, religious violence, gender violence, just an overall kind of fracturing, I think, of the socio-cultural fabric. I see it as that. Maybe, someone will disagree with me. But how many things can you outrage for all the time, every day? I mean, I'm asking a question about the basics and fundamentals of human nature and psychology. Because, I mean, I can speak for myself. I find myself waking up in the morning, logging up to my social media handles and feeling outraged at the first thing I see. And then that just kind of persists through the day. It's an cumulative effect. So, I'm not answering your question. I'm kind of digressing. But I think it's just there's so many things to be outraged about all the time.
That's true, but coming specifically to your question, so there were some 3 dozen writers, Sahitya Academy winner writers, who had returned their awards. And besides there was a few Padma Shris, Sangeet Natak Academy and state academies. Right. So back then I had been personally reporting about almost everybody, interviewed a lot of them. So over the last 10 years, what I have sensed, that several of them, they carry a sense of hopelessness. They are resigned now. Kisse kya hoga? Nothing has happened. And not just that they they were defamed for being anti-nationals, for running a sponsored campaign, which they didn't, for being leftists, which they were not. Now, a decade later, some senior writers, they are questioning them. You'll be surprised what are the latest questions are they facing. कि आपने award तो लौटाया. Did you return the amount as well? If not, what did you do with the amount? So they are now being asked the questions, what did you do with the amount? Please understand, the award vopsy, it's an act of courage. It's a token award vopsy. Yeah. I mean, you don't go to the Sahitya Academy door next door and offer you an award. So, but these are the kind of absurd questions they are facing. Yeah. So this is how senselessness and the absurdity has crept in the system.
Let's also move on to the other point of discussion that I want to raise is about the killing of Madvi Hidma. Last week, police in Andhra Pradesh said that Hidma was killed in an encounter with 6 other Maoists. Hidma is said to be associated with about 26 attacks, including the 2010 killing of the 76 CRPF personnel, which is regarded as one of the worst massacres in Bastar. Now, there is a section that is saying that Hidma's death has dealt a severe blow to that faction of the party that kind of aims to persist with the armed struggle. How do you see that? Do you agree with this position?
See, Hidma was a tribal commander. He emerged from South Bastar, which is Sukma. If you look at the topography of entire Bastar, in north you have Kanker and Abuchmal. Deep south you have Sukma and Dantewada. And Bijapur also. So he emerged from South Bastar and he soon rose to become a very eminent commander. And when the 1st battalion was established by the Naxals in 2008 and 9, he was the commander of that battalion. So yes, in that sense, it's a major blow to the armed capacities of the Naxal movement. But this death is not the lone blow. Please note that for the last 1 year or so, the way numerous of them have been eliminated, several of them have surrendered, including Bhupati, several of them has been arrested. So now the Naxal movement in its fag end. The question that we should now be asking is not the end of the red corridor. As I just wrote, the question should be, what next? Yeah. Now that we have Naxal Mukt Dandakaranya, what hope, what justice can we offer to the Adivasi? Removing Naxals was just one part of the constitutional obligation. The bigger obligation is, what do you have for the Adivasi?
I think
that is where the Indian state is failing. Yeah. That is the question that we are not asking.
Yeah, I think that's the important question to ask.
So I want to ask you, just relating to that itself, that as Ashutosh was just mentioning, that from when Operation Kagar started last year in January, there has been a sustained effort to get rid of Naxals, and this has a parallel movement has continued with counterinsurgency, asking Maoists to drop arms, giving rewards, announcing rewards. But at the same time, Union Home Minister Amit Shah has said that no one likes it when a Maoist is killed. He said this in Dantewada earlier this year. So, and he has urged Maoists to drop arms and surrender. But in such a scenario, when civilians are also facing the brunt of these killings and counter-insurgency programs, what, as Ashutosh is just saying, how do you see this whole, what should the government's response be now that you have dealt a severe blow to the...
No, I completely agree with what Ashutosh is saying, because, I mean, you can say that nobody wants a Maoist to be killed. Firstly, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that statement and who you're, who is the targeted audience for that comment, because it could mean different things depending on which audience you're addressing. That's one. Yes, I mean, in principle, nobody wants anybody to be killed, but then we see that things don't work quite that way. I think the question really is that, I mean, the Maoist movement, the Naxal movement emerged in a particular context. The people of those areas, the Adivasi communities of those areas, have also faced the brunt of both the Naxal violence and the state violence in their homes, in their communities. I mean, I remember going, this was almost 9 years ago, 8 years ago, something like that, I went to Dantewada, Sukhma, to follow cases on the sexual harassment and rape and allegations of sexual violence that women were making, and lawyers like Bela Bhatia and all were helping them fight these cases. And I mean, the kind of horror stories that you hear, and you have people say, oh no, you know, our forces are not meant to do this and our people are not meant to do that. But there are women who have recounted absolutely horrific stories to me. I've written about them, I've reported on them while I was in NDTV at that time. They're still waiting for justice. So justice is also at many levels. I mean, justice is about empowerment, justice is about actual delivery of justice, justice is about, you know, making sure that there are no further, you know, instances of abuse or violence or whatever have you. It's a whole ecosystem that created this kind of violence, and you need to address the delivery of justice at various different levels, from health to economic empowerment to social justice to equality under the constitution to right over their lands.
And finally, Ashutosh, I want to ask you, just taking off from what Maya is saying, that in such a scenario where the government is claiming victory in ending the Maoist movement, in a sense, Amit Shah, Home Minister, has said it many times, and there is not much being said about the civilian cost of this whole operation, which has been for many decades, and human rights violations have continued. But there has been no political attention to that, even from opposition parties. Do you think that is lacking?
That's unfortunate, and the reason being because Amit Shah cannot solely claim the Amit Shah doesn't have the sole claim over this entire operation.
That's right.
Let me tell you, exactly 20 years before, it was Manmohan Singh in June 2005 who said the Naxals are the biggest internal threat. Exactly 20 years before, in 2005, Salwa Judum was launched when Chidambaram was at the helm here. So there has been a sustained policy by several governments, be it the Congress in Chhattisgarh or Telangana, who eliminated Naxals from Andhra Pradesh. YSR Reddy. Who was at the helm in West Bengal when Kishanji was killed? Mamta Banerjee. Mamta Banerjee, in her first year, it was Kishanji, the dreaded commander back then, who operated between Jharkhand and West Bengal. He was removed in just a couple of months in a very infamous encounter back then. So several political parties have systematically moved in this direction over the last 20-30 years. Insurgencies, they cannot be eliminated in a single day or 5 or 10 years. It's absolutely foolhardy of a media to portray Modi and Shah as the one who brought this us. No. Now coming to the second question, why the media is quiet again, why the opposition is quiet against for their complicity. I give you an example. As I said, Naxal Mukt Dandakaranya. What next now? Gadchiroli has been largely freed. Gadchiroli part of Abujmar. What are they doing in Gadchiroli? After becoming the chief minister last year, Devendra Fadnavis appointed himself as the guardian minister of Gadchiroli. He started making visits there. a singular company called Loyal Steel has been awarded contracts to mine from to conduct mining from Gadchiroli, and they have exactly encroached upon the land where earlier the Naxals had been living. What are they doing there? They are massive deforestation, contaminating their water, their river, and the Adivasi life has completely gone haywire. This question is not being asked. What next? Yeah. Naxal, the removal of Naxal was just one part of the operation. Are you going to give justice to the Adivasi? That is not visible.
I think that's really
that has to be the headline. That is the headline. What were you clearing the forest for? What? Adivasi. What were you doing for the Adivasi?
And that's also a sentiment that if one visits Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand and all these areas, that the question that the Adivasis over there ask you this is that you have removed them, but what about us?
What about us?
We are still living in this, I remember last year when I was in Chhattisgarh for the elections, they were saying that the rest of India is in 2024, but we are living in 1950 and 60. There's the lack of development. So, okay, on that note, thank you so much to the two of you for joining us and to the viewers for watching.